I feel I have.
There it goes. There it goes. Okay. Well, it says it is. Let's see if that's true.
Do we believe it?
Yeah. Okay. Let me pull it up and make sure everyone can hear us and all that. Good morning, YouTube. Yes, we're here. It's so funny that today's topic is just so funny. We're live with Candace Craw-Goldman, one of my favorite people in this whole world and probably in the whole universe for that matter. You just mean so much to me. And we're going to like make everyone gush and cry and stuff. So I won't get into too much how we met, but we have a beautiful, beautiful thing in common. And that is our connection to the work and beautiful, late, beloved Dolores Cannon. And that is how we met.
Yeah, I think, Dolores was the matchmaker there.
Yeah. Candace and I are as different as night and day and probably wouldn't have met otherwise and just developed this beautiful friendship that just is beyond time. And I love you so much. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here with me. You're just absolutely an amazing person. And I just couldn't ask for more in a friend and human being.
Oh my goodness. Pamela, being with you anytime at all is such a gift and so healing for me. Thank you so much. Before we pressed the record button, I was talking to you about, all of the ways that I've expanded as a soul and a human knowing you. And even though, gosh, a lot of other people are like that out there, we stay so busy. We don't text every day. We don't talk. Sometimes weeks go by before we chat or say anything to each other. But you're never out of my heart. And I'm so glad you are in the world and in the universe too. Did you see they've just shown supposedly what the black hole, I just saw a picture a few minutes ago, actually, what the black hole at the center of our universe looks like. Supposedly there's a photo of it now. I'm not exactly sure how they manage such a thing.
That's what I was going to ask. And how's their camera equipment right now?
All of that, right? All of that. And you can extrapolate that all the way down to, we didn't ask many questions during the moon landing, did we? About all that camera stuff. I even yesterday, I'm trying to move some videos off my phone onto a hard drive to do some production work that I'm trying to do. It's not straightforward. It's not easy. We have so much more computer capability, and yet we sent pictures live from the moon back when I was a little girl. Well, I don't know. And, we just kind of bought it hook, line, and sinker. And I'm not even saying that I completely deny it. I just don't understand it if it's true. Right. And I have a lot more side eye about a lot more things. Yeah. As time goes on. As a matter of fact, every time I think, okay, well, what else am I going to give a side eye to? Like, okay, I didn't know about that or really understood that, or now that makes some sense. I mean, that sort of continues as we go now into 2022, isn't it?
It sure is. That's a interesting thing as we are learning and uncovering so many things that we thought we knew about our government and about our world and about how politics operate, about how science operates and how it doesn't, about medicine.
Just information in general, right?
Yes,
it's the information issue here. It's funny you should say politics. I'm sorry, I jumped right in and interrupted you right away.
No, you're good.
I got inspired because I said something to my husband, and I don't even really remember what it was. Oh, it was a post on our support forum. Mm-hmm. And he said something about that post. And he says, well, we have to pay attention to that because that could be political. Mm-hmm. And of course, we are a practitioner to practitioner support forum. But there's a thing about these ideas of dividing lines, right? And so, I'm talking to him. I'm like, I'm watching what's going on there. Everyone's being absolutely amazing, which is a thing that doesn't happen on the internet very often. Respectful for opinions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, we don't focus on politics here. And I'm like, well, the thing about politics is the people who immerse themselves in it and take the power within that structure, they affect our lives in a monumental way, And it's extraordinary. And I don't think he would mind me saying this, but I paid zero attention to any of that for the longest time. If people started talking about it, I just ran away. I wanted nothing to do with the process or anything. And I still don't appreciate it, especially now after really understanding some of the depths of the depravity contained within it. But we've sort of switched, meaning when I watch something happen, I'll say something to Tom and he's like, well, I just don't pay any attention to politics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talk to the Canadians right now who can't get on a plane or a boat or a train if they haven't had an injection. That's pure politics, and that affects their lives. And I'm not even saying I want to go down a political conversation here. I just don't. But I think it's through all of these systems with this information stuff. And you know what? Before even 2020 happened, we were already a little bit on information overload. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, we are way past the red line.
The red line. We are like bulimic on information.
Way past the red line. And that passing of the red line with that much information and so much of it being incorrect and so much of people claiming to be the one who can determine whether it's correct or not, which is a whole other
right, based upon what political side they're on.
Yes, right. Or what truth is to them, or what agenda that they have, and all that. And that's such a huge energy, you know what? And it is sucking us. It is just absolutely
very
sucking.
draining.
It's sucking us dry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hear Dolores right now. Go get goosebumps. She goes, that's why you feel good outside. Go outside. More outside. You're
turn it off.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? The thing is, it's not even though when it's not even intentional focusing on it. Sometimes I think simply that stuff moving through the carrier waves and the devices, even if they're turned off, even if it's sitting over there, I think that little thing hums and buzzes and emits a kind of energy that you just need to get away from. Sometimes when I can go outside or just to the garden or to the barn or whatever, and Tom's like, I'm just trying to call you. Why didn't you take your phone? I'm like, I'm not going to surgically attach that thing to me. No. He's like, I couldn't find you. I'm like, good. Then maybe nothing could. Nothing.
Yeah.
And I could recharge.
No, my kids gave me, and you know what that translates to. I bought it and wrapped it up and they gave it to me, but they wanted me to have I don't have it on me right now because I don't want it, but typically I would try to put on, sometimes I'll try to put on my iWatch. It's one of these Apple watches, and I liked it because it would tell my heartbeat, and I can sort of do the yogi thing and try to lower my heartbeat when I feel it rising. And there were some really interesting things like compass and making sure my head is not at the wrong direction when I'm sleeping. And some of the the things that energetically speaking, I pay attention to more as a yogi. But then it had all these notifications to all of my social media that, by the way, I typically only use to post something mystical, or to let you know that I'm about to go live and talk about something, that's really touching my heart. And it just kept beeping, and then it would ring. I realized that my phone was connected to it, and people could call me and text me just the same. And I was like, so then I had to learn to put the do not disturb on it, but then the notifications were still coming in quietly, popping up. When I'm trying to drive and things like that. And I had so many little interesting feelings about modern technology. And I'm feeling that does apply to our topic today. It does apply to radical acceptance, because truth is a big factor in what we're choosing to feel empowered or disempowered about. And truth is very subjective in our world, particularly in our modern times. And as information is flying into my little device here, which thankfully I don't have on today, I was like, just no. Charge it, left it on the charger. I'm not even sure I'm going to bring it, right? And I, getting away on a little bit of a nature birthday gift with my wife today. And I'm like, I'm not bringing that thing.
Good.
But then, like, as a mom too, my teenagers are watching my little one. And as a mom, there's a part of me that feels like well, that's a bad mom thing to do. You don't really, what are you going to do? You set alarms to remind you? Well, maybe you should wear the thing on you, because it'll set an alarm. It'll tell you to check in with them at this time of the day. And I'm like, look, my heart is the alarm. The end. My heart is the fact checker.
Wow. Yeah.
My body will tell me if I need medicine.
Let me write that down. Pamela Aaralyn says, my heart is the fact checker. I love that so much.
Some people are screaming, do or don't invest in crypto right now. Do or don't take a vaccine. Well, my body said, wait. And then my body said, okay, now you're more scared of COVID than you are the medicine. So you're in alignment for a vaccine. And I did it as a guinea pig. I did it. I was like, well, I'm going to do it and see what happens. See if I can clear it. You know what? I did, and nothing happened. I feel exactly the same. And as a medical medium, I can tell you my body's exactly the same, but you have to be in that energetic state of alignment where you nothing the vaccine and you nothing all the politics surrounding it. So I nothinged it, and I took it just so I could tell my community what happened, but also because my alignment was nothing towards the vaccine and total fear of COVID. Do you see how alignment really?
Of course. And a lot of that, but oh my gosh, I have lots of questions. I also know we're live, but just for my own internal research.
No, totally. I'm completely.
Which one did you get? Do you mind me asking which one?
Oh, I got the one everybody's afraid of. I got Moderna.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. I think they all got their focus on fear, but wow. Yeah. When did you do this, Pamela?
It wasn't that long ago. I think in June I'll be due for my first booster. So it really wasn't that long ago. However, if you could do the timeline on, I think they make you wait 6 months to get your first booster. So I had my first dose and then my second dose, just like they make you wait 6 weeks after that. And then they make you wait 6 months if you're under 50. And that'll be 6 months in June. So count back 6 months and 6 weeks. And then, that's it. Not long ago.
Well,
yeah. So can you nothing it? Can you nothing it? Do you know your soul? Do you know your conscious and your subconscious and all the layers of yourself? Not just what you think you know, all your subconscious. Because I had to pray about that. I had to meditate about that. I spent a lot of time in researching my body, my particular autoimmune disorders, and with my particular autoimmune thing, and that, and how often I get sick. And I thought about where was my true fear, and it wasn't with this vaccine. Now, granted, can I tell you when I look at the rest of the world and say that's the exact same case? No, I feel a little bit in an interesting and different alignment.
I'm almost speechless. If all the things that you were going to talk to me about today, and if somebody would have asked me to bet money on this,
I'm always full of surprises, Candace.
I wouldn't have come out ahead in my pocketbook because.
But it was radical acceptance. I had to accept that I had a fear, and it wasn't medicine, and it wasn't my government. It isn't. Now, does that mean I trust them? Hell no. Pretty much never. I know my truths. You know what I mean? But there were certain things I knew about my body, and I knew that my body would just completely accept it.
My good friend David Manning, he comes from a medical family, and when he went through his cancer bouts, and he's been through a couple of them, he had such an interesting take, and we had such deep conversations about some of the conventional approaches, and some of the best conversations we had was because internally I knew that I was coming from the opposite place that he was coming from. And, if nothing else, even forget the subject, if you can have some deep and meaningful conversations with somebody on a topic where you are at polar opposites, that's where we come together as humanity, right? And that's, I think, a big stumbling block and a big issue in what's so hard about dealing with some in society these days, is when they on their radar or listen to something you say, or just determine, or just assume, or whatever, and then they put you on that other side of the spectrum, and then they just cut you off from communication. Boy, that's that I find that very difficult to accept, and it doesn't feel like that is the healthiest thing for a society.
Right. What I notice is we are holding so many potentials, so many paths for how we observe and perceive truth. And if it does not unify us and pull us in stronger, then why believe? Why believe in your political leaders? Why believe in your medicines? Why believe in your body's immune system? Why believe in your own empowerment if you don't want to honor the reflection of the loving being right in front of you that prior to COVID, you had no qualms with? Prior to all of these political changes and wars and internal behind the scenes things going on in our awareness and all the things that have come to the surface, none of us can deny when people came forth about human trafficking and all the things being hidden by the government and, and Epstein and all these things. I went, yeah, you didn't know that. Where have you been? Right. And then I said, okay, now what are you going to do with the information?
Yeah.
And it became this age of, if you don't believe this, we are not friends. I saw communities splitting apart, people divorcing over their choice. I remember when I recently came out with this, I had people then commenting on my YouTube channel. I had to delete, I have, people that moderate, and she had to delete so many things. My research assistant who runs that channel had to delete so many things because it was, and I did too. Because it was like, oh, I bet you also voted for Biden. I bet you also, believe you're far left, and you also this and you also that. And at the same time, I had just married a woman. So all of these things, people were piecing it together. And then, and truth is, I haven't voted in a very long time because I don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. I didn't like the people before them. And I didn't like, I like Clinton a little bit, but only until certain information came out. Right. And then that idea was blown. And I really loved Kennedy, but I was a baby then, so I couldn't vote. And I really haven't liked anybody since John F. Kennedy. And he was my idol.
I think about him all the time. Do you know that it truly is one, and I'm one of those people who can remember all the way back into being a near infant. And I remember the television set, and I remember what happened in the room when we found out he was shot in 1963. I remember that. And I've never forgotten that. And I've always, if you listen, occasionally I do listen to a couple of his speeches, and, the disclosure speech of his is amazing. Yes. And compare the way that man spoke to the buffoons that get in front of the microphone now and the things they say now. And there are times, it's when my brain has that thought that I go, okay, honey, it's time to go outside.
Go outside, vent. Don't say that. Don't say that. Your soul is saying.
Yeah.
Say that publicly. No, but I hear what you're saying. And I remember that feeling too. And I remember my grandmother crying. And I remember my parents being so shocked, and there was just quiet. No one could speak. Like the silence was so palpable, and it brought people together. We thought about our own mortality. We got some information about our governments that we had before.
Right.
There were a lot of things that we kind of felt, but we didn't know. And I just don't remember feeling that way since then. So I didn't vote. And this whole idea of you vote this way, which makes you this type of person. You vote that way. You took a medicine, which makes you this type of person, or you didn't, which makes you that type of person, when we're not walking in each other's footsteps. And the radical acceptance it takes to live in this modern society with all of these choices in the age of technology and information. I knew that in my heart, if I got somebody sick, it wasn't even about me. And if I got sick, what was more important is if I got it and I didn't know it. And if I came into like an elderly community to go visit my mom and I got her sick, there was something there that I really needed to go into my soul and deal with. And that was a part of my decision as well.
We actually dealt with, and this was late last fall, where my dad's caregiver, who's in his face for a number of days, sick with COVID.
Yeah.
And, you know, he is 91. He was then too. And, you know, this house elected not to get the injections. But we did other things. And she just thought she had allergies, right? And she was one of those people who the symptoms, at least at first, were not anything big. And then she had some rough going after about 5 or 6 days or something. But we were all on available prophylactics, shall we say, and we were fine, and still have been fine. I mean, you know, every day brings something else. You never know, but it has been a really interesting set of details, bits of information, and the things that are coming through to follow, you know, really, really interesting. And some of the emotions tied up into it have been, you know, whoever expected we'd be in a place like this, right? That is basically what I come back to. And some of that stuff can be big and so heavy. And these days, you know, for those who are listening, when Pamela said, you know, come with me on the show. What do you want to talk about? You know, I actually looked at your text for the longest time. What do I want to talk about? And the biggest answer that came back is, you know, still dealing with work, still dealing with dad, still dealing with, you know, keeping the community running, still dealing with society, and all of that entails. But I'm finding I am the absolute most at peace, and I feel healing energy move through me so strongly when I'm doing the smallest things, weeding my garden, brushing my cat, just sitting in the sun for a little minute before this thing and that thing has to happen, rather than being, you know, constantly productive. And I do look at my emails and for those of you, or any of those of you who are listening, are like, yes, I'm waiting. I know that I'm behind on correspondence, and I know that I'm behind on work. And whereas I used to just push myself for those things, now I am finding like I'm giving more energy to the small moments, and they're, you know, that's making me so happy. And it's not that I didn't do that before. I did, but I'm allowing the smaller moments to draw out and really appreciate them as these precious miracles throughout our day. Even when I brought this plant because there's no light right here and it can't live on this wall. It has to go somewhere else for unless, you know, it's being used kind of as a backdrop. And I just, you know, sat and kind of communicated with these blossoms and really looked at the spots on those petals and allowed myself that, you know, even maybe 45 seconds of joy, just
Mm.
tiny joy. And, it's not a frivolous joy, right? Those things aren't frivolous. They are healing. That energy goes in and finds some erratic or disturbed energy, and it helps to even that out.
It's because it's sacred. It's sacred because it's intentional. And in that moment, it was just you and your soul.
Yeah.
And those brief moments.
It you? It wasn't you, somebody. It might have been you, Pamela, when I talked so much, and it may have been even before I knew you very well. Matter of fact, I think I'm getting some of the memory back. When you live streamed into our first, we didn't even have BQH yet. And our forum community, we didn't even know that we were going to, most people just thought we'd shut down because Dolores had been gone and the other things that happened with her heirs. And, but every time I checked in, it was like, nope, for some reason, no, we're not supposed to. And you were part of, that in between time, that reimagining and redefining who our group was time. And Dolores never did it. Never had a meeting for just the European practitioners, right? Like the transformation conferences and things that the support forum would have put on in association with them. That didn't happen in Europe. And so I believe it was 2016, the summer of 2016, we gathered with some just amazing people who are some of my best friends on the planet today. And we live streamed you in. And, back in 2016, that wasn't giantly easy. That was this was some of the first time people were kind of doing that. We're like, well, I hope.
I think we still had Skype then, didn't we?
It might have been. And things like bandwidth and it was
reverb.
No, it was not a small thing, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Pamela channeled Dolores for a bunch of practitioners, and a bunch of these practitioners had sat in the same room with that woman more than once, right? And it was extraordinary. And while you were channeling, is it okay if we go down this?
No, I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Right here. I'm going to make a point about animals, but some of this is coming up. It feels very inspired by Dolores. While you were channeling Dolores, my good friend, who I didn't even really know at the time, I knew her picture, I knew her name, but Harakatsiki was sitting over kind of in the corner of the room. And while you were doing this thing, I'm looking at her, and I'm a little almost worried about her, because she's so visibly something, and I'm not sure what's going on there. And, I think what you did is you sort of jump-started her own very strong connection to Dolores.
Oh, I don't know about that. Haraj, she's like so connected that she produces Shakti in others. Like she just like,
it's true. It's true, but it wasn't until then. And believe me, I sat with her at lunch after that, and we've been hard and fast friends since. But the whole thing was, it's something about your presence, something about Dolores's energy and strength. She was able to accept this in herself and grow and move that from there. Anyway, it was beautiful. But during this question and answer period, there was a lot about healing, a lot about beyond the veil kind of stuff. But, everyone, or most everyone who knows me, knows how focused I am on animals. And I remember talking about that. And it's either you directly or Dolores through you, or a combination of the two, I think, were the ones who said to me, and it may have been at this meeting, I'm so absolutely connected to the welfare of the animals, and the animals around me too. And one of you said, or maybe both together as a combo, said, when you are cradling, holding, healing that creature, you are truly doing this for yourself, for a part of your soul that also needs it. This was an extraordinary thought to me. Even after doing this work for, 8-10 years, it just rang like a truth bell throughout my body. And it helped me to understand so much about myself. And to this day, even when the cat, Tam, was sitting in my lap right as we were going live, and I'm like, you are getting hair all over my clothes, and I got to go to the bank after I talk to Pamela. And she's like, but and it's true. It's like she needed that hug, and she needed that hug and that comfort because I need it. I need it too,
I remember shortly thereafter, I had a birthday or something come up, and I had been channeling a bunch of your horses, particularly Luna, I believe that it was. And I was feeling you having this big connection with that one and her wanting to say some things. And then for my birthday gift, when you cut your horse's mane, you braided them all and sent them to me. And I remember feeling that, knowing what you meant by that, knowing it was like you sending a piece of your soul to me. And I still have that. And I kept them on my altar, and I would bless it, hoping you would feel me blessing your soul through your horse's mane.
I absolutely feel that. I absolutely feel that. I've been doing some here and there every once in a while, some organizing or things. And I came across another braid. And I actually had to really look at it for a while, because at first I couldn't tell if it was my own hair or a horse, or really my own really old hair, or a horse's mane, or a combo. I actually had to look at it, go, whose is this?
Yeah, because that's what it felt with one of the braids you gave me in particular. I was like, did she put some of her in there? And it was so interesting what I felt when I got that gift. And I just wish people could see into that. I'm watching chat right now, and there's a lot of comments being deleted because people are still talking about vaccines and, how they feel about it and all this stuff. And I'm like, can you see beyond that right now? Can you go deeper with us? Can you see that you got two very different people, one who vaccinated, one who didn't, one who probably believes this way, and another who doesn't? I mean, total opposite sides of political fences, and still we could talk about anything.
Yeah, we can. And it's because we love each other.
In full respect.
And accept each other.
Yes, that radical acceptance that it takes to sit before people. And this is what I want you to do. Everybody that you meet is your Candace. Everybody that you meet, feel how I'm feeling right now about Candace. And the stranger that's barking away on the next internet forum, that is your Candace. Do not say anything that I wouldn't say to Candace and that she wouldn't say to me. Yeah. That's your radical acceptance today. So practical. That's your best friend sitting right in front of you. That's my Stephanie. I would never say anything. Stephanie and I are also opposite sides of the fence in our belief systems, but we would never say anything like that to each other, that we would say, well, think about this and what you're doing to others and what you're doing to yourself and what you're blah, blah, blah. No, that's your Candace. That's your Pamela. Would you say it? My soul would say, no, that's right. Candace. You better mark your words and put your heart on the table and know that it's safe.
Yeah. Sometimes when I see some of the things that people say to each other, I always think about billboards. I always think, would you like that sentence that just came out of your mouth to be on a highway somewhere with quotes around it, with your photograph and your name? Would you like that? Would you be good with that? With that, because and what I think about in that way is, which seems sort of silly, but when you put that out there, that is energy that's going out there, that's going out into this energetic realm in which we exist. And you can rest assured that that creation exists, remains existing, and perpetuates in some form, an echo or whatever, out there. You can do other things. You can change your mind. You can profoundly ask for forgiveness. You can do different things like that I sort of modify some of the other energy. But I don't know that it ever goes completely away, right? At least a record of it somewhere in the Akash or whatever,
right,
is there. And once, I think if you could really follow your own self throughout the day, including your own internal thoughts. Imagine some of those own internal thoughts being put up on a billboard somewhere.
Or put away in a sacred text that will one day be read by your children's 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 children. And they open it up and they say that they find some deep scroll hidden somewhere. And it's about you being pissed over a medicine.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or just, you know what? My mom did this thing. It's something I'm working on personally right now. My mom, I'm in the middle of dealing with the items in the family home. And I knew, and she told me about it. She kind of kept like these journals, and they were just in spiral bound notebooks, and she kept them by her bedside. And she always said, now you burn those when I die. You burn those when I die. Promise me you'll burn those when I die. And, you know, I neglected that drawer. Well, it's been 6 years.
I got to stop your sentence right there, because Dolores is behind you saying, I'll never let anyone channel me. The spirit. It's the same thing.
Right. It's so interesting.
It's so, do you talk to her now?
My mom or Dolores?
No, I know you talk to Dolores.
You know, they often are close to each other. Sometimes one voice will come in, or one energy, however you want to look at it, very close to each other. And, you know, for a while I used to question my own sanity with that until, you know, Dolores once said to me, well, Candace, it's because I've had more lives with your mother than I ever had with you. And sometimes in my own head, I would think, which mother voice is coming, Dolores or my mom? My mom was a little older than Dolores. And I always thought Dolores would far outlive my own mother, but she didn't.
Yeah, I did,
of course. But by 2 years, she lived 2 years past Dolores in the calendar year, but several more years age wise. But I finally, you know, and I knew that she wanted me to do that. I still have I haven't burned them. I'm still thinking about them. And this is why am I talking about this? Because I think a little bit about the billboard, right? The billboard thing. So here my mom wrote stuff, and a lot of it was venting. But you know what? I opened up just the first page of the first book. I read one sentence. And my mother said, Paul, my dad, Paul hugged me. Capital letters, hugged. Hugged was underlined 1 million times. A whole lot of exclamation marks after that. My mom and dad had a very volatile relationship, wasn't very demonstrative at all. And the gift of that sentence in my own life was so beautiful. But I closed the book and I haven't looked anymore. And I'm still sort of like,
you can copy them and then burn them and say, well, Mom, I burned them.
oh my gosh, how funny is that? And then I thought, well, maybe I saved them for generations. And I'm sure that my mom, because she explained that she, rather than have a therapist or whatever, she wrote all this stuff out when she was angry and didn't have anyone to talk to or whatever. But this is, those of you out there, this is why we do that. And then often we go burn that, because you have to think about your children, your friends who comes to deal with your effects when it's all over. Those words, you know, what will they do? You know, so there's part of me, there's always the archivist in me, right? That's why I love our forum so much. When we first got together, we were like, Dolores said this, and what about that? And I mean, it goes all the way back to 2008. And some of it seems just so basic and elementary right now. And rather than want to destroy it, though, I think of it as, boy, a digital archaeologist would just love to look at those people and how they were first starting to figure this out. And that I could even see that in our forum archives all the way up until now. So when I'm looking at my mom's stuff, yeah, talk about acceptance, right? Accepting that they had the relationship that was like that. And then I want to save it maybe, and maybe it's my great grandchildren who would find it fascinating, and even just her German style handwriting. But maybe it's so negative I shouldn't do it. And I'm still, well, I haven't burned them yet again.
Talk to her.
Yeah, I could see her right now going like this. I think there's probably some lovely things in there. I think there's a lot of things that she thinks and probably would be painful for.
Maybe the answer is yes and no. Maybe some things get burned and some things stay. And
I like that. And there's we could do bibliomancy, right?
right.
You flip through and all, this needs to be read, that needs to be read, this page needs to be thrown out and burned immediately.
Right.
No, this one back here, even though it hurts, just read it quickly and acknowledge it and go. I don't know. That's a really fine way to consider.
And then there are some things, I mean, I could imagine a little bit in my mother's situation. She was feisty, she was the fire of the family, the passion, all this kind of stuff. And I can imagine if my kids came across her journal during a time where, God forbid, they have a hard marriage with someone like my mother. And would it make sense to them?
Right.
Would it make sense to get, a mentally ill perspective? Would it make sense to get also a deeply spiritual perspective during a time where spirituality was not accepted or, except for in the confines of religion? Right.
Or in the confines of a private diary, right? I'm not going to go talk to a priest. I'm sure not going to go to a therapist. I can't, whatever. Yeah. I mean,
it's something that they're going through makes sense. And then they read an elder's diary and they go, wow, that even happened back then. Wow, this explains why I have the gifts that I do. And I thought it was mental illness. This explains I have the gifts that I do. And then I let it turn into a mental illness because no one helped me. No one helped my mom. She would sit around. She told me some of these stories that just broke my heart. It's like right when I get like super mad at her and I go into these stories and I can't not forgive her for a lot of pain that she causes because of these stories. And I imagine if I find those journals when she passes, and one of the stories has to do with her getting so mentally ill that she got up in the middle of the night in her nightgown. And this is not more than one occasion. This is multiple occasions in the middle of winter. And she sat on the lawn chair and cried. She wouldn't come back in. She would just bawl loudly, cry, howl at the moon in pain. And you know what my dad said? You're over dramatic. There's nothing wrong with you. She said, I don't care what you do with me. If you think I'm possessed, take me to a priest. If you think I'm mentally ill, get me some help, but I don't care if I need some physical medicine, but make the pain stop. And I imagine like my kids getting a hold of that. God forbid they ever struggle and no one's helping them. And they get inspired by that to actually get some help, to understand that that's what it looks like when a spiritual gift turns into mental illness.
Yeah.
God forbid. Right. And then they go, wow, this happened to my grandma. I'm going to go get some help now. I have more help than she ever had accessible in the 1960s and 70s when that happened to her. Yeah. And imagine that in like 2080. When my kids are like middle age or whatever.
It's almost getting, the idea of this kind of on paper journaling kept forever and ever. I've always been so drawn to that as, somebody with an intense interest in the human condition. I have the strangest little things that I've picked up around, from an abandoned house or an antique store. Tom actually asked me the other day, he was like, I found this because we've got some things going on, some sorting and some farm things going on in our shop. He's like, I found these things in the corner of the shop, and he's showing them to me. And one was a little black diary, and he's like, what is this, right? And it's like some stranger's diary that I probably picked up with some weird pictures. I have this weird thing, where I like to read, these were people, I think this particular one, people in the 1940s, and this woman wrote it every day in her diary. Every single day she wrote the thing. And I think in some ways, Pamela, are coming back to even some of what we started talking about, at the first of this conversation. Sometimes I'll just flip through and I'll read. She's like, I ironed today. And then I took Madeline over to and it's the small moment, these small moments in this woman's life from, 70, 80 years ago. And it's so interesting because it carries some really sweet energy that amplifies some of my own small moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just sit with it. And I have to tell you, because she keeps telling me, Dolores is like, tell her. Okay, I'll tell her. Do you know what you've done by talking to me about sending you that horse's braid? And I believe what it was a combination of both Mama Bell and Luna Bell's tail braided together and sent to you. And I remember vividly now, although I don't know if I would have remembered this easily, but you're thinking about it, right? You're thinking about the energy of that, even that thing. And you deposited the remembrance of the energy of me doing that and sending it. And I remember walking back from the barn, with what the wind felt like on my face. And what I've been told over and over and over again in meditation, in sessions and dreams and everything is, as wonderful and free as the spirit world is, the sensation of wind across my face is one of my top 10 reasons for being on the planet, which is, funny why I'm in Kansas, right? People of the South wind. It's windy always here. It just makes me laugh, right? But the concept, the idea that Dolores is she's like poking me in the back. Look at what was really the gift here, other than just the horse and everything. Oh gosh, I'm going to cry because, my Mama Bell, Luna's mama, died in 2020. Yeah. The wind that was through those tail hairs when they would run, right? And sometimes, not Luna Bell, but Mama Bell. I was on Mama Bell for many, many miles and many, many hours, many years, with us together running through the air with the wind. And that joy and braiding that all together, right? So it wasn't just, it was all of that. And that, and of course, to me, a lot of that has to do with freedom, and freedom is just so precious and important to me.
It's so important, despite our political differences and anything that we believe or don't believe, and everything that's subjective. What is not subjective is what you just talked about. That's something that we'll remember always. That's why we're keeping the journals. That's why we send each other gifts that are beyond something we could buy. That's why when you're sitting there in southern France, you did what you did. And then you took that sacred thing home that was probably a really rare thing, and you diced it in two and made it into a pendant and sent it to me. And then I don't know what happened to yours. Something happened to it. So now we've got to dice mine in two, and I've got to send it back to you.
You know what I love about that, though? It's sort of like, it's quantum entanglement, and it's like you can't ever get to nothing. We could probably dice it forever and ever.
Right. And that is it. That's the sacred in the extraordinary. And that's the path to radical acceptance. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. I wanted to talk to you about also what is dividing people, which is why we started out not talking about that, what keeps us from it. And that is our chaos. Many of you who are following me right now on my social media have been seeing these very mystical experiences I'm having. And I write about them and share them as often as I can, as soon as I get comfortable enough to, because some of them are quite different, daunting, sometimes even challenging. And when I work with these saints, particularly Therese of Lisieux, as well as an occasional Teresa of Avila, and a lot of Saint Francis of Assisi, they will say things about the sacred in the extraordinary, and they don't mean the standard definition of the word extraordinary. They mean how superordinary it is to live the sacred life. And I thought, particularly in my most recent teachings about the soul, the messages I'm getting is that we are putting ourselves in so much chaos that we're steamrolling the sacred. We're steamrolling the extraordinary. So I wanted to draw that out of us today. That's why I wanted to talk to you today, is to talk about how we keep creating our own chaos. And then we create so much chaos in our fears that then God has to come in, or source or universe, whatever you believe, comes in and does this sweep of our lives. And I call that divine chaos. Deaths, marriages, births is not just negative, divorces, but marriages as well, death and life celebrations, big time job loss or new jobs that stress you out. There's all kind of divine chaos, right? And then you go, God, universe, why did, that's not exactly what I was trying to manifest. Why me is the prayer that we pray in our souls. And then when you're listening closely enough, because this is what God said to many of the saints. God said, well, I couldn't get to you otherwise. I couldn't get to you. Yeah. So what I'm enjoying what you're talking about today is how powerful it is that you're still not being swept away by the world's chaos. And that even though divine chaos is also happening to you, you're using it creatively to open up to the sacred even more in your programs, in the way that you reach people. You're listening, you're developing from a new calling when you're told that there is a new calling. And you're honoring the old calling when you know you need to reinvigorate it, without saying, but God, it can only be this or that because I'm busy with dad and I still have some things I haven't settled with mom. And the caretaker just did this and all the chaos. You're still going, okay, I'm listening. Okay, I'm listening. I'm here.
What was the meme I sent you? I'm looking at my phone right now to see if I can find it. I just loved it so much. It made me laugh, and it made you laugh too. I'm going to find it. Let me put Pamela's name on here and then I'll find it. Pamela. It was the, there it is. So it has the, I can't remember, one of the, I guess, Disney characters or something. And it was, oh goodness, I just dropped it. Come back. No, it was universe. I'm asking you for a sign. And
a sign, your sign.
Yeah. And like it's a flower or something. And
a bird land is on her hand. A bird land.
Oh, yeah.
Hand. Yes.
And then the character says, no, I was looking for a signier sign than that. Just cracks me up. Absolutely cracked me up. And that's what I sent you. And that's how we ended up talking about what we're talking about.
And I believe it was Teresa of Avila who said to me when I first started these mystical experiences with her, I said, is it really you? I mean, my teacher talked to you constantly and based her whole life's work around it. And here you are with me. Why would you come to me? And she said, you talk to Jesus all day long and you're surprised that a saint is here? You're surprised that a saint is here. And I went, but my teacher's already done all the work that could possibly be done with you. And I cried and I pleaded and I went, no, just go back to my teacher. She's 70, she's about to pass and she's probably got so much that she could write about you. And she said, no, yeah, I've done that. And now I'm here with you. Are you going to push me away? And I'm like, but what if my clients think it's religious? And what if, and she said, okay. And then she didn't talk to me for a month. And, and then she'd come back. And I kept needing these signier signs, as you called it, with that funny meme. And one day a cherubim came. I said, make my heart more open to it. I've never told anyone this yet. I'll write it later for you guys. But in this experience, a cherubim came and it came with its little spear arrow type thing. I don't know what you want to call it. And they're not little and they don't look like naked babies, by the way. It wasn't that. And of all of my work with the angels, this cherubim came and it slowly pushed this tool into my heart while I screamed. And I'm looking at Teresa and she said, you wanted a sign? You wanted a sign?
Signier sign.
You wanted more. And it hurt. And when I woke up, I had this horrible, I remember even leaving the room because I didn't want to concern my wife. I'm still that way. I'm freshly newlywed. So I'm like, no, do not scare the wife. So I literally went to the other living room and sat out there and cried. And I was holding my chest and I went, holy cow. And then suddenly I saw this light coming from it, this rush, like a lighthouse over an ocean. And then I cried because that felt good. And I said, okay. Okay. All right. Now I'm good. No more signs, please. No more signs. Just give me maybe a couple weeks break, but no more signs. I'm good. We can write now.
You're making me think of a concept. There's, in all of our lives, we know of or have experienced terrific heartbreak, and if you ask most humans about heartbreak, typically it's, well, somebody either did something to you or betrayed you or died or whatever like that. And pondering that and getting some information from beyond about that too, it's always occurs to me that and once it sort of breaks, then it can get bigger and accept more love. It's part of the moving into an expanded heart place. Sometimes this heartbreak. So sometimes there seems like a villain that is perpetuating something on somebody, and why you might not agree, or you might have made different choices of what's going on there. Don't be so sure the one who's experiencing the heartbreak didn't on a different level say, yeah, I kind of need that heartbreak. Right. Thank you very much. Right. If you talk to a conscious, I bring my own family into it all the time. If you would have asked my mom and my dad and myself, hey, there's going to be this day in April in 1989 where, this amazing son and brother of only 26, and he's just going to be alive one second and gone the next. And, our conscious minds, all of it would be like, no, we want a different way to expand our spirit and learn these things. Pick something else. Of course we would have done that, right? Our conscious mind doesn't want to know that.
Right.
But, that trajectory is one of the reasons I'm sitting here talking to you.
And we try to understand that trajectory and what that's going to feel like and why it needs to happen, who deserves it and who doesn't, who's worthy of it and who isn't. And one of the beings I talk to regularly, Archangel Michael, actually explained this very well. He said, and because he's so simple, just straight to it, he said, so you're mad about, and he identified what I was angry about, and it happened to do with Ukraine. It broke my heart, and I was mad. I was like the wrath of God, like just pissed. And he said, I said, they don't deserve that. And he said, so Africa doesn't have water right now. Do they deserve that? In your country, you're ripping each other apart. Do you deserve it? And I said, well, actually, possibly, yeah, we're kind of shitheads. And I made him laugh a little. I said, but Ukraine, they just don't. They just don't. And I could understand if it happened to us, but not Ukraine. For some reason, Ukraine's just this super holy place in my Akash and past records. And I remember, I don't really know if there's a place like this and if it really exists, but in my Akash, it does exist. There's this place where there's this holy water that sprang from nowhere.
I knew you were going to talk about that. I mean, I don't know how, but I knew you were going to talk about holy water and springs. I'm sorry.
And something about holy water. And the same thing came forth in my experience with another saint, in Lourdes, in France. And I had that same feeling of how could she go through so much, that saint, when I talked to her. Her name was Bernadette. I met her because one of my clients who comes to our workshops all the time, when Samantha used to do them and we'd all meet together, her higher self has an aspect of that being, and she didn't know it. And that's how I met Saint Bernadette of Lourdes. And she talked about holy water. And I thought the same thing. How did she deserve all the flack that she got from the church and then from the government, and then sometimes from her friends and from the local people. And that made me angry. And Michael said, so this isn't about who's deserving or who's undeserving or who's worthy or who's unworthy. Do you think that she felt worthy also? Saint Bernadette, to receive blessing. She was undereducated. She wasn't the best nun. She just wanted to be someone's maid keeper. She wanted to be a housekeeper, and she wanted to just do that and be a servant. She didn't want any education. She didn't want to go be a nun. She didn't want God's blessing. She didn't pray all day, and she could barely remember her communion rites. So would God, in the religious aspect, say she's worthy? That is outside of the mind concept. That it's outside of what our mind could perceive when we're using these words. What God chooses to do, what the universe chooses to bestow and bless us with, is beyond our definitions and our firm limitations of worthy, unworthy, deserving, undeserving. And that's something Michael so strongly imparted to me when I was so upset about Ukraine. He said, so I'm going to do it to you. Are you worthy? And I'm like, yeah. Actually, America is it's pretty rough right now. We could probably use the divine chaos. And he said, oh, please don't pray for that. And I said, no, I won't, but I'm just being honest with you. And I just couldn't get my head around it, because I was still using who deserves what and who doesn't, and innocence versus not innocence. And he said, well, do you want me to take all the people who are innocent in Ukraine and pull them out right now, and then just take all the people who are unworthy in the prison cells and put them in Ukraine and let them get bombed? That's what he said to me. He said, yeah, so take all the people out of the prison cells who've done horrendous, like multiple life sentences, rapes and murders, and I'm going to put them in Ukraine, and I'm going to pull the nice people out, the good people out, and God's going to bomb them. Do you feel better now? I said, no, I don't feel better now. He said, okay, so stop saying deserving and undeserving. Just stop it. He kind of made me cry a little bit. It was so intense.
Pamela, I don't know if you know this, but just a few weeks ago, a tornado came down
close to you.
Yeah, it actually was. It's about 20 miles from our house, but it went right through. I mean, like that's our stomping grounds. As a matter of fact, the place where I get my horse feed, their place didn't get wiped, gone, but suffered significant damage. Right next to that was the YMCA where Tom goes to exercise.
I saw the drone feed of that area was ridiculous. It was crazy.
It was crazy. But here's a couple thoughts that occurred to me while you were talking about divine chaos and all that. So that night, I'd already, as a matter of fact, we kind of thought most of the threat had gone. Actually, some of the animals that I had put up down in the basement, I'd actually released. Horses were still in the stalls because of hail. I didn't want them to get beamed on the head with big hail if we still had storms. And Tom and I we were facing an issue, and we actually found ourselves shouting at each other a little bit. We don't normally do that. A shouting thing between us is not typical. Things have to get kind of real, but we're people, and this is a thing that happens when people live together. And there was a little bit of shouting going on, mostly about not understanding each other. It's never name calling or anything. It's like, understand me. No, understand me. a little bit of that, which is not typical, but there was, while that's going on, all of a sudden the devices and the tornado sirens go off, and we go outside and we see that tornado. And of course our shouting stops immediately. But even as I'm watching this tornado, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. We just were like this, and we come out to the deck and the tornado's going, and we didn't have any perspective of how far away it was. We actually thought it was about 10 miles from us, but it was much further away and much bigger. Mm-hmm. But the point I wanted to bring out about the deserving, you're making me think about this, because to this day, and even here in about 20 minutes, when I'm going to for sure have to let you go if we don't do it any sooner than 20 minutes, I'll be getting in my truck and headed that way. Okay. And what you can see right now, and it just boggles the mind. It absolutely boggles the mind. This was an F3 tornado, an F4. A lot of them have to do with wind speeds and how big they are on the ground. An F3, actually, it's not giantly large, a footprint on the ground. It can still wreak a lot of havoc. But when you drive through that neighborhood, there's like a 80-year-old stick shack right across from the feed store. Not touched, not touched at all. Right next to it was this newer I think it was golf carts. It's like a golf cart business place, with a warehouse that sold golf carts and everything. Obliterated. The little wooden shack is fine. And then over here where there's some homes, same thing. Marched through this neighborhood, and that home has a few shingles flew off. This home, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. They're next door neighbors. And then that house gets to stay. And then on the other side of that house is mostly gone. You can look at 3 houses in a row and go, how did that even happen? How did that even happen? And talk about deserving. Who deserved all their house, half their house, and a couple shingles? Who deserved that? Right. I don't know. But you know what? Yeah. Imagine the dreams, the diaries, and the conversations those people are having right now.
The rubble that they're going through, and that chaos.
And the perspective that they have, things that were huge issues the day before. Are they now? Maybe it just, but maybe some perspective. Yeah. There's all kinds of things. Gosh, tornadoes are so strange. And the one that took out most of my parents' neighborhood in 1991, in those days, there wasn't cell phones. It was 3 days before I even knew if my parents were okay, because all the phone lines went down back then. Yeah. And I'd hoped so, but it was 3 days before I heard from him. There was photographs taken, and the craziest thing, my mom and dad had as a lot of people do, like the metal lawn chair picnic table set. And then there was those $10 plastic chairs that you could stack. There wasn't ever maybe enough of the metal chairs, and they were old as the hills, but there was a few of those plastic chairs. The picture was shown to me about, and I still can't believe it. I still think about it a lot. All of the metal chairs were either they disappeared or were gone. I think one was maybe sideways, and the rest of the metal chairs were. And there were two of these plastic $10 chairs that you can pick up with two fingers, sitting upright, right by the table. Explain me that energy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been in those type of situations with hurricanes, having lived in Louisiana and Texas for many years when the kids were babies, and going through Katrina and then Rita. And then which one hit Houston after that? There was one that just wasn't Harvey, but the one before that. Oh, there's been so many. Harvey just flooded most of my children's baby photos. It broke my heart, right? Because we had them in storage. And the one before that, it's kind of Rita. I remember like Eli was still barely even a conception in thought at that time, and Emmy nowhere near. So we had a toddler and a baby, 2 years apart. And or maybe it was, we had, I think it was something like that. Yeah, toddler and a baby, because Aiden was still in diapers. He wasn't even 2. And he's 17 now. And I opened the windows, and this massive oak tree, like bigger than what I could put my hands around, or maybe even like 2 of me with my hands, rooted right upside of my apartment building, flies by the window. The branches scrape the window, and I run in fear back to the closet and start praying, and like everything was just desecrated. Like half of that town was just like shot, wind damage, like galore, flooding, all kind of stuff. We didn't have electricity for 5 days. And I remember taking the babies and staying with a client of mine who's a friend. And I went to Kansas actually to stay with her. I got in the car and I went, and the huge lines of fuel, people trying to leave. And I went and stayed in Kansas for like a week or so with a friend until it came back. And just, and then the other one starts with I. What was that one in Houston? Our whole subdivision, the only thing we had go wrong in that particular one, Ivan, I think, or something. What was that one? That one, I lost 2 shingles. Our whole subdivision had like a little cloud of protection around it, but almost everything around it, all the other subdivisions lost power, lost internet, lost power for a long time, couldn't get water, like so many things going on. And ours wasn't touched. Like the only subdivision in Houston and the suburbs was, Westheimer Lakes, really? Why us? It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder if it makes sense anywhere. I mean, it probably does if you look at soul contracts or things that need to happen and don't need to happen. And probably in some other realm, it absolutely makes sense. But it's fascinating that we
go to the deserving.
Yes. And we try to look, and yes, if y'all out there wonder, as you're listening, how spiritual am I? Well, if you are thinking about these things and people who deserve that and who don't, there's other people out there who probably think you deserve it, right? in the division games going on right now. I mean, this sort of hierarchy of beliefs is it's just patently ridiculous.
I'm glad you said that, because that's something Teresa said to me in my visions just last night. We were going through what she calls the castle of the soul, and we were in my soul and its visual castle, and we were down in the dungeon of it. And she said, "Who you got in there?" And I looked and it was my dad. And I went, what? We had a fantabulous relationship. I was the princess. And she told me why. And I went, oh my God, I wouldn't have expected. I put him in there for that. And she was like, well, guess what? You better let him out because you know what? You're in his. You left him with your mom during the hardest times ever. You just like went off to college and left everybody with their problems. And I said, but I was supposed to. That's what we do when you're 19. You go off. Well, he doesn't like it. Nobody goes off to college. He didn't go off to college. His grandparents didn't go off to college. He didn't know. So you are in his prison. So you better let him out. Wow. And think about that for a while.
Wow.
Not for a while, maybe 5 minutes. But still.
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
I'm going to let you go. You need to go.
I do here pretty quick.
Go.
Yeah. Got to go do some 3D banking stuff. But
do you feel like telling people where to find you or any things you have coming up that are exciting?
I do. You can always find me through the quantumhealers.com website. We have a directory there of healers.
I'm there too.
Yep. Yes. And if you are a practitioner of any kind, you're welcome to join us. We're a horizontally supportive community, but it's practitioner to practitioner. It's not like personal kind of a service to you. It is a service to others. Place supporting those who do that. I'm working on something that I've been calling Quantum Connect, and it has to do with the allowing in of some of these higher energies and connections to your higher self without a trance state. And it's nothing new, like in the realm of things being new on the planet, but it is sort of something that I've honed in on, and I'm creating a standalone approach for not just us woo-woo type that do past life regressions and hypnosis and energy healing and things like that, but even people who are interested, maybe life coaches, psychologists and stuff, calling it Quantum Connect. And I'm having a lot of fun creating this course. I'm having some of the other people in our community help participate as characters in there. And I'm even doing like some role playing myself where I'm like, the TikTok videos where the people play the two things. I'm doing that. So it should be a really fun course. Quantum Connect's what I'm calling it. So I just need to get my video editing hat on and get it out there. I've been working on it for a while. I was going to just put a couple webinars out. And every time I thought, well, this is just what I'm going to do, it was like, no, it needs to be bigger. And so I've been working on it for quite some time. But that's coming up, and you can stay in touch with me on the quantumhealers.com website by subscribing to our blog there. I'm sure you would find that interesting. Other people, not just myself, contribute to that, and you can see what the rest of us in that community are up to. Thank you for asking, Pamela, and thank you for asking me to talk to you today. I always feel so healed and energized when I connect with somebody whom I love so much, who has a heart so big like yours. And I feel very nourished.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you so much. Guys, we'll be doing more. We're going through the practices. St. Teresa of Avila has been guiding us through, and I've been channeling her to help us through the practices of what we call the Castle of the Soul. So you can go find all of those practices and a lot of my mystical experiences with her on my Patreon community. All right. I love you guys. Have a great day. Candace, I love you so much. I'm going to let you go do your business. And
I love you.
Yeah, have a great weekend, guys. Thanks, Candace.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye.